Hello and welcome to the assessment review of 5CO02, which is evidence-based practice of the CIPD Level 5 qualification. Now, this is the one that most people panic about because there is some data analysis. But before we even start, let me put your mind at rest. They've made it a lot simpler, a lot easier. It's just more about the case study and just about interpreting the data a little bit more than it is about sort of all the different percentages and things like that. However, there is a little bit of percentage work, but we'll cover it off. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. Right. Let's dig into it. So, tasks. You must complete 2 tasks. The first one requires you to answer 7 questions referring to the case study. Your answers should respond accurately to the questions and should be informed by wider reading and key academic texts, articles, and relevant publications. For the second task, you must complete data analysis and make recommendations based on your findings. Please ensure that your work is presented clearly, typically using subheadings or AC references to link your responses to the questions, and that your work complies with the word count requirements stated in the assessment brief. If you exceed the word count by more than 10%, your work will be referred. References should be included within your answers unless the question specifically states they're not required, and full details presented in a reference list at the end. So yeah, if you want you to lay your work out AC 1.1, answer, AC 1.2, answer, AC 1.3. So subheadings to go through. Now, with these new assessments, CIPD have really lent into the case studies and really lent into the information and data in terms of giving you the ability to come at this as a CIPD specialist people professional. So you're coming in, you're solving problems, you're looking at issues, you're coming up with ideas. That's how they want you to do this. So here is the case study. Techivara, designer, Technivara, design and engineering components for electronics industry, supply parts for the computer, electronics, and medical and automotive sector. The company was founded in 1970 by Bill Swanke and is currently experiencing the 16th consecutive year of growth. So the board now feels it's the right time to expand the business. Bill is very involved in the day-to-day running of the company, which he likes to run in a traditional style. He tends to avoid changes to the existing working practices. Sue Young, the people practice team manager at Technivara, and although she has been with the company for 8 years, she's continued with many of the people practices that her predecessor implemented, many being paper-driven. Sue is aware that the company doesn't change, some practices will be susceptible to risky decision-making because the current approach to capturing and measuring people practices is weak and lacking data-driven evidence. She knows that you, as the people practice advisor, have more up-to-date experience using evidence-based practice effectively. She has asked you to help her understanding of how evidence-based practice is applied in organizations. She needs to provide Bill and the board and the rest of the people practice team with a persuasive case for improving the current approaches as the archaic and inadequate to meet the needs of a modern, fast-thinking workplace. Sue has asked you to complete 2 tasks. Firstly, respond to 7 questions below, and then complete your data analysis to make sure the recommendations based on your findings. Well, that was trickier to read than I thought. Anyway, task 1. You've got to respond to questions 1 to 7. You have 2,900 words. So 2,900 words is you're looking at 414 words per question. Remember, you can go over by 10%. 1 word over by 10% on the whole assessment, refer instantaneously. So make sure that you apply your word count sensibly when answering the questions. Now, let's go. Question 1, evaluate the concept of evidence-based practice and provide 2 examples of where Technivara could use to ensure sound decision-making in people practices. So if everything's currently paper-based, And the concept of evidence-based practice provide 2 examples where Technivara could use it to ensure sound decision-making practice. Evidence, so have your idea, find some evidence to back up your thinking, find some research, prove your point. This isn't just, I think we should do this. This is, I think we should do this because evidence A, evidence B, and evidence C says this is the right thing to do. I also think we should do B because evidence 1, evidence 2, and evidence 3 think we should do it. I'm not saying you need 3 references per point, but you definitely need to prove your thinking. So if it's 1 piece of research and there's 3 pieces of evidence within it, use it within the answer. Prove you're right by evidence, not by opinion. This is data-driven practices. Question 2, evaluate 1 appropriate analysis tool and 1 appropriate analysis method that Technivara could use to recognize and diagnose issues, challenges, and opportunities. So what analysis tool could you use? What analysis method could you use? How could you use that to recognize issues and challenges? So the perk of this is when you start to research analysis tools or when you start to research analysis methods, a lot of them will have a lot of research backing up why you should use their method, why you should use their tool. So you're going to have the data to back up your thinking. But evaluate showing why you think it's that one. What do you think's good with it? What do you think its limitations are? So I'm evaluating this analysis tool because it's got this, this, and this. It does potentially have some limitations because of this. You're evaluating it. You're looking at it as a whole. You're providing the evidence as to why you're making that recommendation, but you're also making them aware of what the potential drawbacks could be. You're evaluating it as a whole. So look at some tools that you like, look at some methods that you like, and then make the decision as to which one you would recommend. Again, evidence to prove your thinking. This isn't what I think versus what you think. This is what the evidence suggests. This is what the evidence says. Question 3, explain the main principles of critical thinking, including how these might apply to your own and other ideas to assist in rational debate at Technivara. I think I've just pretty much explained this, but the main principles of critical thinking in terms of, so research what the main principles and how you then apply them. So this is what when we talk about critical thinking, we're looking at not just the negative elements, we also look at the positive elements of things. So if someone's got an idea, what could the benefits be? What could the drawbacks be? It's not just this. One of the things people you see a lot within meetings is everyone just focuses on the negative. Well, actually, the process of critical thinking is what could be the pro, what could be the benefit from that. So if there's this drawback, what could then be the benefit? And you build it and you build it and you build it. So again, evidence, research, point, reference, citation, proving your point. Evidence, research, citation, reference, proving your point. Just on repeat, explain. So you just explain what the elements of critical thinking are, the main principles, and then how you apply this principles to assist in rational debate. Many people think if you've got people that disagree within the workplace, then they're having a conflict and stuff like that. But rational debate is people with different opinions coming together, challenging their opinions so that consensus can be made. Because if people can't express that I've got a reservation with this and I've got a problem with this and I've got a problem with that, then what you find is that things just simmer underneath the surface and you don't solve things. And if things simmer under the surface and you don't solve things, you then have more and more problems. So just remember, you're doing this so that things can come to the surface. You can have a good debate. You can do it with evidence led. So it's not personal. It's not Gary thinks this and Steve thinks this and let's have a fight until it comes to Gary thinks this and his evidence says this. Steve thinks this and his evidence thinks this. What evidence have we got that will help us make the best decision possible? That's what he's trying to get to. Question 4, explain 2 decision-making processes that Technivara could apply to ensure effective outcomes are achieved. So I'm talking, for example, when I talk about this assessment with you, I'm talking about a decision-making process, which is find the evidence, research the outcomes, research evidence and outcomes that prove your thinking and your opinion when you're asked to do this. That's the same for decision-making processes. So look at decision matrices, look at decision structures, look at things that people do, SWOT analysis, pestle analysis, things like that, to ensure that they've got effective outcomes, to ensure that you've thought about all the different elements. A SWOT analysis talks about strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Pestle looks at environmental and things like that. Now, is environmental needed within tech? Potentially, because you've got import taxes going on, you've got tariffs, you've got all these things going on worldwide, and this company covers quite a lot of sectors, electronics, medical, automotive, within its specialist field. But these are the types of decision-making processes that you need to have in place. And if the board agree to a decision matrix, like how you run decisions collectively and how you discuss them, that helps, doesn't it? As opposed to just going, I think this, I've got this research, I've got that research. So build it. Question 5, assess 2 different ethical perspectives, including how these could be used at Technivara to inform and influence decision making. Ethical perspectives can, when you come in at things from an ethical perspective, you need to think, okay, well, what are my ethics? What are the organization's ethics? What are the industry ethics? And there's ethical perspectives from multiple different ways. So when you think about ethical decision perspectives, you think about the organizational ethical perspective. Now, is the organizational ethical perspective the ensuring that the company is financially stable and everything like that? Things so that could potentially negatively impact customers, could negatively impact staff. You've got the stakeholders. Do you do everything ethical to make as much profit as possible for your stakeholders and the people that are invested in the business? Or is it your staff? Do you do everything you possibly can? So again, you've got to think about the multiple different ethical perspectives, because you can't get everything right. A lot of things in HR can often feel like a whack-a-mole, where you're like, well, we need these benefits for this organization, but that's going to have a negative impact on this. Now, is the negative impact on this actually going to end up being a benefit? And these are the things that you need to consider, because ethical decision making can be a lot of the time balancing different pieces, and you're never going to get it perfect all the time. So you've got to try and think about, well, what are the core values and visions of the organization? What are we staying within them, making this ethical decision? There are multiple models out there, and it gets really, really complicated when it comes to ethical decision making and stuff. So I get some of you might be thinking, well, this is really difficult, but define the ethical issue. Reflect on your personal values, reflect on the organizational values, consider the stakeholders' perspective. So stakeholders could be investors, it could be customers, it could be consumers. Analyze the alternatives and then decide collectively. So if you're looking at ethical perspectives, look at ethical decision making frameworks, because that will give you the perspectives and how you go about them. Bit of a trickier question, but think about how you would want decisions to be made in an organization. Think about the ethics that you would like to have within an organization when it comes to making decisions. Because if you don't, people will just go with whoever's got the loudest voice or whoever's got the most votes. And actually, if you can get a decision-making framework in place within an organization, then it stops people from just going off the cliff a little bit more. It's a tricky question, but I'm sure you've got it. Question 6, appraise 2 different ways that Technivara could measure financial and non-financial performance, providing one example of each. Financial performance, money in the bank. Non-financial performance, staff engagement surveys. Sickness, recruitment, retention. All these are non-financial performance metrics. So think about different ways that you would track financial performance and non-financial. Sales, income, profit, recruitment fee paid per year. These are all the different things that are money. Non-financial, happiness, wellness, sickness, recruitment, offboarding. Provide your examples, research evidence in terms of what you would measure and why you would measure it. And then question 7, explain how people practices could add Technivara and identify 2 methods that might be used to measure the impact of people practices. So when you pick your financial and you pick your non-financial, how would you measure if it's successful? How would you measure if the decision that you've made is right? What do people recommend? What is the research saying? How do you measure the differences? So if for example, you decide you're going to talk about staff retention, well, how long do you measure that staff retention percentage? Is it annually? Is it quarterly? Is it monthly? If it's engagement surveys, do you just do one a year? Is it annual appraisals in terms of performance, or is it ongoing feedback? How do you measure and report the success or the challenges that you're having? That's what this question's asking you to do. Now, if you are struggling with anything, we've got CIPD Bite Size. CIPD Bite Size is short form video against every single assessment criteria where we break it down into its component parts. We'll give you some recommended reading, and we also create a fictitious scenario, a bit of a storytelling, just to give you an idea and look at the question from a different perspective, completely away from HR. And that can be anything from magical cake making to pogo stick disco. Just to let you come at the question from a completely different angle and potentially see, yeah, I get it. I get what they're trying to understand with this particular question. Now, also, if you can leave a like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, it also helps us grow the channel. It also helps us help other CIPD learners so that they can find this resource, because we make these videos completely free. Bite Size isn't free. It is available via YouTube at $29.99 a month on our subscription model, but these videos will always be made available. Now, we're going to jump into task 2. Task 2 is always the one that gives people palpitations because it's the data analysis. And you've got 2 sets of data here. You've got turnover and recruitment take-up for Technovara in 2024, and you've got evaluation data from the L&D activity for Technovara. Don't worry, you get access to these. You can download them. You can put them into Excel and stuff like that. So Table 1 shows Technovara's turnover and recruitment rate for 2024. Sue has asked you to convert the data into a percentage form for each department to show the leavers as a percentage of the total number of employees, the vacancies as a percentage of the total number of employees, and the positions filled as a percentage of the total number of employees. Now, I'll put the word total there because that's critical. Looking for the total, not the departmental. However, the next part of this question will ask you to create diagrams within Excel. So it makes sense to calculate every single one as well as the total and the sum. So to calculate a percentage, you divide the part by the whole and then multiply by 100. And you can do that within Excel. So take the part, the whole, multiply by 100. I'm not going to do it on the screen. I'm not going to calculate anything like that because I don't want to give you the answer. You don't need to provide any in-text citations for this. So take the part, divide by the whole, multiply by 100. Do it for everything, and then make sure you do it for the total, because the question asks for the total. Total. But question 9, you've completed table 1. So it's assuming you are going to fill in all the elements using a minimum of 3 different diagramical forms. So again, think about the 3 things that you filled in. If we go back a question, total leavers, total vacancies, positions filled. And then you've got to create 3 diagrams. So you could do it departmental diagrams. You could do it as a whole diagrams. You've got to create 3 total forms. So again, fill out the table, fill out the Excel sheet, and then just highlight areas that are of interest, charts, and it'll bring up relevant charts and bits and pieces like that for you. It's as simple as that when it comes to Excel. So try not to stress too much about it. YouTube's obviously another great way where you can create pivot tables and graphs and charts and stuff like that. But as long as you fill in all the white spaces, everything else will fall into place. I promise. Now, the second part, Table 2, contains evaluation feedback from 42 employees who attended a recent learning and development activity. Sue would like you to review the feedback and identify patterns, themes, or trends that might be occurring and present recommendations based on your findings. So, evaluation data: 1, people fully agree; 5, people strongly agree. Look at where people fully agree, look at where people are strongly agree, look at where people are just in the middle. What do you see in this data? Are your facilitators good enough? Is the learning linked to performance good enough? Were they able to apply the skills and knowledge? Look at the questions and then make some recommendations. Make some recommendations based on data. So if you think that the facilitator provided a clear set of objectives, well, and that's got a high score. So let's just use that as an example. How does that benefit? What data can you find to say clear objectives benefit people learning? Sounds obvious, but there is data and there is evidence to back up your thinking. Obviously, 34 people fully agree with that. 5 fully agree, so that's probably not one that's worth the answer, which is going, we need to do that. So again, think about what you need to show, think about how you need to go about it, think about what you see in this data, and then find some evidence to back up your thinking. So if, for example, at the end of the session, we're learning outcomes achieved, why is it beneficial that learning outcomes are achieved? What evidence can you find to prove that learning outcomes need to be achieved? This is what it's asking you to do with this particular set of data. Now, remember, your evidence must consist of, and this is what it says, completed calculations, 3 diagrammatic forms, data analysis review with recommendations, 1,000 words, refer to the CIPD word count policy. So again, it's giving you that you need to complete all the calculations, even though it asks for totals. It's asking for 3 diagrams, and it's asking for a data analysis review with your recommendations and evidence behind it. It's telling you where you don't need to have references and citations, which is 2.2 and 2.1. Do need to have it for 2.3. So build out your answer, build out your structure, and you do absolutely fine. Best of luck with this particular unit. If you're struggling, obviously there's CIPD bite size, but please make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel, because we do reviews of every assessment that comes out from CIPD, just sort of this type of overview assessment to make sure that you don't fall into any obvious pitfalls, where we break down the question and highlight the elements that you need to keep an eye on. Best of luck. I'm sure you'll do great. Take care.